So I'm going to dial into the trans community for a second, because that's a tough one in some circumstances. What comes to mind is the swimming thing.
Yeah.
That whole, you know what I'm talking about? Okay,
Yes.
trans woman,
Yep.
won a women's category swimming, and then people just are beside themselves with outrage.
Yeah.
Mostly, that's the noisy ones.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what is your position on how to handle that?
Well, it's my opinion that if you're born male,
From a chromosomal standpoint or
Yes.
a genitalia standpoint?
chromosomal.
Okay, so you're
if you're a
rocking an XY.
yes, then you shouldn't be able to compete in women's sports because
What about other women's things? Like, and I'm doing air quotes, like women's things. Like I'm having a women's retreat, or I don't know.
okay,
I
if
got
you
nothing.
had the sex change, I'm okay with a woman going in or a trans woman going into a women's restroom. But that's kind of where I draw the line. If you had to go through that change,
Okay. So no to competing in sports, but yes to using the bathroom.
right?
Okay.
Because women, I know this may get some political flack, but women tend to be less athletic than men. So I want to protect, my nieces. If my nieces have good athletic ability, I want them to be able to succeed against other women, just like I'd want my nephews to succeed against other men if they had that athletic ability as well.
Okay. So XY chromosome, that's where the line
Yeah.
is.
And I wouldn't have a problem with if the trans community wanted to set up their own division. Like, okay, these people are trans people. We're going to have them compete.
So trans women category,
Or
trans men category.
or you could put them into just one overall category. How they
So all trans men and women competing against each other.
It could be that, or it could be separate as you suggested. I wouldn't have a problem with any of that.
So in a hypothetical scenario, and then Jordan, I know you've got a lot to say on this. If you are a trans man, competing against other men, do we have a problem there?
They were born XX.
Yeah.
Born XX. Yep.
I
Went through
would
the
wa-
surgery, doing the shots.
I would prefer that they still compete against women, but I will say,
Yeah, it's a hard topic.
Say this: any woman that can compete and beat men, I say go for it.
So you would say yes to XX competing against XY.
Because women are inherently less athletic. Okay.
Okay. No, it's good. It's fine.
I know it's kind of.
It sounds sexist, but I mean, there is a reason why we distinguish men's sports and women's
That's
sports.
why I would keep going back to XXXY.
Right,
I don't know if women are less athletic, but we maybe have a hormonal. Why do women always have to take the inferior?
Okay.
You guys have this crazy different hormonal thing that happens to you.
There's something
Makes you
different that
more
make
muscles.
men.
Less compassionate. I know.
Men just tend to be like faster at track and things like that. I'm not judging.
No, you got more muscle density.
Right, yeah.
Like biologically, you are XY chromosomes, and I'm going to try and dump the men-women word because that's the social stigma that comes with the sexes. Yeah. What if we just talk about chromosomals? Can we do that?
So
Okay.
I think a lot of this comes down to you have two different standard deviations of the populations based on their chromosomes.
Everybody get out your statistics brain from college.
And in general, those that have an XY chromosome are at a higher, muscle mass and all those things on the standard deviation. That's not to say those at the low end then wouldn't be similar to, the XX standard deviation more, or those on the XX scale at the high end. You do have overlap. That is a part of natural deviation. Mm-hmm. Likewise, we are all individually, even, everybody within the XY community has natural deviation. Some people are taller, some are shorter. We do distinguish between categorical, competitions, men versus women. based on the chromosomes. We also do it based on weight class in things like wrestling and certain things. You could also say that somebody who's got the natural genetics of being taller has an advantage in basketball, and so should somebody who's smaller, should they be able to compete against people who are smaller? You get arguments about having an unfair advantage due to your genetics. Mm-hmm. And that is what a lot of this boils down to when it comes to the trans athletes. Now, we have to acknowledge it's not a prevalent issue. It's not. It gets a whole lot more play in the media than it really justly deserves. Because
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. This is not something we're all facing in our daily lives.
Right.
But the reason it gets so much play is because it is such a complicated and difficult
And
topic.
shocking.
Well, and it's a representative example of what our people in our trans community face with on a day to day.
Yes.
Right? It says a lot in one little circumstance.
So conceptually, where I stand on this is I am an advocate for local control. I think those closest to the situation, just like with abortion, the doctor and the pregnant woman, here with the athlete who wants to compete, in girls basketball, I don't think that a blanket policy set by the state is necessary. I would rather empower those who know the student and know where they are at in their development and know where they are at in terms of their identity.
So let's take it off of a student.
Okay.
Because
I was thinking it was like someone that was 8, talking about someone who was 18 and older.
some other competitive venue, because what popped into my head and triggered the question is, how is this different than from saying, okay, if we make it local control for racism, then we could end up in a community where the blacks do have to eat at a different restaurant.
Well, it's
different for sports.
As far as local control here is about deciding, yes, whether or not that individual has the ability to compete in the sport category of their choosing.
The Olympics. The freaking Olympics
So
gets
let
to
the Olympic
decide.
committee to decide.
I would rather, allow the Olympic.
And honestly, I would prefer. I would definitely prefer where.
So why would you do that for our trans people, but not? You wouldn't support that for blacks
Well, so you're saying if the
for
Olympic,
race-based
if the
conversation.
Olympic community, if the people holding the Olympic event decided to have different
race categories.
race categories, I don't think the government would really be able to force. I mean, that's an international organization. I really don't know.
I just
we would be able to enforce it on the NCAA though.
Yeah.
So that might be a more apt.
Right.
okay, and I was literally looking for just like an anchor sport thing that even non-sports fans would recognize.
Yes, the NCAA being quasi-public in many ways, and national.
What is the NCAA now?
National Collegiate Athletic Association or something.
I would
like
bet
that.
money on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's not right, it's close.
Okay.
Now, and that's where I do think there is a big difference between when the competition is low stakes, like 12-year-olds.
But low stakes to the observer doesn't mean low stakes to the performer. This could be a make or break moment in a young girl or boy's life, even at the school level.
Okay, but so take a 12-year-old, and that the girl who's on the basketball team loses and gets upset because on the other team there's a trans girl. Yeah, that's unfortunate for her, but at the same time, they could say, oh, well, there's that really tall 12-year-old, just abnormally, just really, really tall. And that was an unfair advantage as well, almost, in a way. Like, you can always chalk it up.
So let's use the sport of arm wrestling.
Okay.
It's a 1-to-1. Yes, international competition.
Let's turn the cap, or is that the Sylvester Stallone
right?
over the top?
Yeah. Okay. So that's funny because I totally didn't even think about that, but you're right. That is a real thing. You're saying let the sanctioning body of the sport in question make their own dang rules like they already do.
I view that as preferable to blanket policies being set by politicians. I'd be more comfortable in allowing that to play out that way, because when the politicians get in and do blanket, then again, it's really difficult for them to account for the nuance of where a trans person may be in their...
I want to know why you don't have nuances around guns, but we'll come back to that.
Well, I have nuance around how they're designed.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Is there anything from an implementation standpoint in the seat, should you win, that has to be done or that you would spearhead doing about this?
Well, the only thing that would be implementable would be, at least I think, would be at the Michigan High School Athletic Association.
Okay.
But at that point in time, well, before you answer what we can implement, the question you have to ask is, should someone that's under 18 have a sex change? So at what point in time should that be okay? And
that's another piece of this whole conversation to unpack.
And honestly, there is no good answer for that.
Right. Because it's consequential in either direction.
Right. And because it's lifelong consequences, I would say that they shouldn't be able to have a sex change until they're at least 18. Bare minimum.
So let's imagine
and when they're 18, they're no longer in high school, so that makes what the two of us can do at a sports thing.
So a trans man could be a trans man without any sex change stuff and living their life as a man and competing in high school sports. So for that situation where there's been no sex change, it's literally the accoutrement. You've got the socially tagged feminine or girl clothes or, this gets very into social norms.
Are you referring to a trans woman there? Like someone who
I'm sorry.
A woman?
Yes, okay. No, I'm sorry. I flip-flopped it in the middle of my sentence, in the middle of my example.
So a man that identifies as a woman.
Well, let's do trans man because that's where I was actually going.
Yes.
So it's hard to not sound sexist when talking about this, but a trans man, so XX chromosome, but doing the culturally acceptable boy things, formerly known and often known as a tomboy.
Yes. My take on, the question that you posed with regard to surgeries and such.
Right.
Again, I would typically defer to the doctor and the patient to make most of those decisions. I am open. This is still a relatively new discussion.
It is.
And so I still have more that I could learn. But I would, at this point, be comfortable prohibiting bottom surgeries for the trans community until they are adults. When they're adults, they gain full rights and have those surgeries. Top surgeries or hormonal treatments, I would leave up to
can
doctors.
you define that? Because I've not ever heard that language.
Neither have
Top surgeries and bottom surgeries. I'm thinking like
so top is
tits and
mastectomy.
asses.
Yeah, mastectomies.
Oh, really? I'm right.
Yeah. Oh no. It's fairly straightforward in that regard. And the question of whether or not minors are getting these surgeries, there are examples of minors receiving top surgeries.
In both ways, like in breast enhancement, reduction, removal,
exactly.
Make them, take them.
But as far as bottom surgeries, I am not certain if there have been any minors who have received those, and that's part of the reason why I'm okay with that being prohibited. You can still do the hormonal treatments and all those things as advised by the patient and their doctor. It's a decision for them. I don't think that a top surgery is as consequential for the long term.
And I would have to see the information on that before I make any conclusion on that. But that's why I'm leaning wait till they're 18 before they start making that decision.
So let's set that aside and go back to the sports. you had mentioned the high school athletic association, something.
Yeah. Michigan, it's called the MHSAA, Michigan High School Athletic Association.
So from a state government standpoint, what is there like an implementation that you would go to them and say, you can make your own rules? Sounds like Jordan would say, make your own rules. You're the governing body for sanctioning these high school sports. Sex changes aside.
Okay.
Do you allow or encourage like everybody to play in all the sports, or do we keep men's and women's? I mean, it gets difficult.
I'm still at that point where because that they're all but a very slim margin are above 18 or are all younger than 18.
Yeah.
So I would keep them separate, men's and women's.
Okay.
You know.
By chromosome.
By chromosome, yes.
Got it. Got it. It took me a minute to figure out my question too. Sorry.
I don't think that the law needs to distinguish between those who have done the bottom surgery and not with regard to how they. So when it comes to bathrooms, you had said those who have done the sex change.
Yeah.
I don't think a bottom surgery is necessary to choose the bathroom that you're most comfortable with going into. There are a lot of trans men who look as masculine as me, maybe with more hair. But, you know, the idea that the law would force them to go into the same bathroom as my daughters, I don't think the law should be doing that. If they wanted to choose that, that's, you know, that it should be their choice as to which bathroom they are most comfortable with, regardless of what's between their legs.
Okay, and by all means, I'm not saying that trans folk will do this, but this is a worry of mine, and I understand that it may not be as prevalent as the media may make it out to be. Okay, but my worry is, okay, so let's say I'm a rapist. Oh, I then can say, well, I identify as a woman, go into a women's restroom and rape somebody, which is what happened in Virginia. And that's what I want to prevent.
Okay. So, I mean, this hypothetical, let's break it down, though. What should be the crime?
The crime is the rape.
Right.
Yeah.
Regardless of the gender of the person, you know, the chromosomes of the person who's going in there, because men can rape men, women can rape.
Yeah.
If you're in a bathroom and a sexual assault occurs, that is already a crime. It need not be that the person who stepped into the bathroom already committed a crime, because you know, there's the whole thing like, criminals don't abide by gun laws. Well, somebody who wants to rape somebody in the bathroom isn't going to abide by you're not the right, you know, chromosomes for that bathroom.
But I just want to try to make it so that I don't want that to be something that's, quote, normal, where a straight man can walk into a women's restroom and no one thinks two things about it. So it's just more of a taking away that, quote, opportunity.
As a woman, I have to remind you both that we go into your bathrooms all the time because our lines are too long and nobody bats an eye about it.
Quite frankly, I don't care, but I still would like to have that safe space for women. That's all I'm looking at.
So that's a good segue. Let's come back to it for sexism, but go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Well, because, I mean, the idea that you have a trans woman that has identified as a woman for decades, never gotten the bottom surgery, though. The idea that the government is going to force them to use the men's restroom. If you think that men are a threat to women, like straight men walking into a woman's restroom is a threat, wouldn't forcing that trans woman into the men's restroom put that person in danger? If you're going to conclude that people who belong in the men's restroom are a threat to others, like a straight guy like me, if I'm a threat to women in the women's restroom, or I'm also a threat to women in the men's restroom, or I'm not a threat that needs to have the law force a trans person into the bathroom that they're not comfortable going to. I don't like the consequences of the government telling people which restroom that they've got to use.
I get where you're coming from, but